Hi, welcome back to another studio vlog. In today's video, I will be going through the creative process of doing a textile design collaboration for a clothing range. Last year, I was lucky enough to be invited to work for the textile design for the brand Socha Atelier. This was one of my favorite freelance projects for the year, and it was exciting to be trusted to work on their first collection. The theme for their first range was jungle animals and plants. For this, I would create a repeat pattern that could be used across different loungewear pieces. To start, we discussed the kinds of animals and plants I could draw and how many could be produced within the time frame and budget. I would create a drawing of each animal or plant separately, and these would later be combined into a textile design. The art assets we decided on were passion flowers, a toucan, palms, a leopard, orchids, a frog, and a monstera. My first task was to create a mood board for each asset. Here I would provide photos of the animal or plant and also some ink drawing examples. The photos are useful for exploring the stance and pose of the animal or plant. For example, on the leopard mood board, there are a few options of how the leopard could be drawn. It could be in a side-on, front or back view, walking, lying down or sitting. By sharing this before drafts are started, I can get feedback on their preference. For my draft work, I create sketches on Procreate. In the drafting stage, working digitally is perfect because this is the time when I will draw up what I've envisioned, share it with the client, and then if they have changes, I can easily make adjustments. This is the stage where we want any adjustments and changes to happen. Once I work on the final artwork in a traditional form, this will be more difficult. Here I'm creating the Monstera draft. It just so happens I have two Monstera plants of my own, so I got to reference the real theme for the draft, which was fun. For the Monstera, we decided on drawing individual leaves, and for the type of Monstera, I had a few options to choose from. This type of Monstera was an Adamson's Monstera, also known as the Swiss cheese plant because of all its holes. Here are the drafts that I ended up drawing. You can see I had a few rounds of the orchid draft and then the frog. For the orchid, I provided two separate flowers because being separate meant they would be easier to reuse in different ways across the pattern. The feedback was to add stems or leaves, similar to the passion flower. In the end, I combined the two and added stems to make a more complete look. In the pattern, this was used as one whole asset and then also separated and spread out across the print for a different look. The frog's feedback was to change the hand and have it more flat. This was originally drawn this way as it was based off a frog in a similar position. I looked at photos where the hand was more level to the ground and tried to replicate this. I also found the opposite arm needed to be lowered to match this new stance and make it more believable. Once these changes were made, I was able to begin the final art assets. The brand found me online through my social media. I was approached because of my ink drawing style. They were looking for Melbourne-based artists to create unique prints for their slow apparel brand. The brand was seeking out hand-drawn detailed ink drawings for their prints, and this being something I focus on made us a good match. They were able to share an initial mood board of their brand to help me visualize the kind of work they were looking for, and we were able to work out a timeline and budget to start working together. First step for the final asset stage is to print out the draft onto the size being drawn and trace over it with the light box onto final paper. I was given an indication of how big roughly an asset should be on a print before this stage. With this knowledge, my plan was to draw the asset slightly larger and then scale it down once scanned. Drawing them larger to start with meant their details would look more detailed and fine once scaled to the final size. When thinking about the size of the hand-drawn assets, I wanted to draw them at a size I was used to for this particular plant or animal, and I wanted to draw them at a good size to later sell as original artworks on their own. This meant drawing each asset on its own sheet of paper in the hopes that it would also make a great original artwork. Here I am drawing the passion flower, which was easily the longest asset to draw. It's interesting when considering timing. All my assets were roughly the same size, but because this flower had so many tiny repetitive details, it took much longer to produce. For the passion flower, I remembered I had once taken photos of a passion fruit bush I saw one year on a weekend trip to the Mornington Peninsula. These were climbing along the gate of an Airbnb I was staying at, and it was the first time I had ever seen a passion flower. I was in love with how weird and wonderful it looked. I liked it so much that I've been trying to grow them in my own garden for about 3 years, and I've been unsuccessful. I'm on my second passion fruit plant now after the first died, and it only has a handful of leaves currently. And so, for my passion flower drawing, I ended up referencing my own photos I had taken of the flower to draw from. I even had a quick look in my garden at my own passion flower leaves. Next, I'm drawing the toucan art asset. When researching this bird, I came across 2 types of toucans I could draw. One was the keel-billed toucan, and the other was the toko toucan. We ended up deciding on the toko toucan, as it is a much more well-known bird. Not long after I completed this work, I went on holiday to the Amazon in Peru, and I got to see a toucan for the first time myself. It was from a distance and very far away, but still exciting to see, knowing I had recently drawn it. I love the idea of capturing photos of animals myself and using this as future research or as a reference material in my own drawings. Now I am drawing the palms. As we were on a very short time frame for assets, I chose not to draw the whole palm tree itself, but instead draw some palm leaves from the palm tree instead, to help me meet the deadline. I think for this type of pattern, as most assets are a similar size, it wouldn't make sense to draw one asset that is naturally much larger than the rest. It would make the pattern print look odd and out of place, so drawing the individual leaves instead was a good meeting point. Onto another asset. Here I'm drawing the leopard, which was one of my more fun pieces to draw. I remember when looking at references, I couldn't find a pose that had the exact stance I was imagining. We chose to have the leopard walking on its side view, with its head facing towards us. I'd pick one photo as a main reference, draw the outline of the body, and then switch up the leg and tail placement to make it more my own and more visually appealing. The spots on the leopard took a long time to draw, as there were many of them and they required some layering to make darker. This opportunity gave me a chance to work on a project that combined both my art and design skills, which I've since discovered is one of my favourite kinds of work. I have always been drawing, and that is primarily what my personal work focuses on, but I've also built up a career in graphic design, including surface and textile design, and I've found when I get to combine these two worlds, I can make some pretty fun and exciting things. I enjoyed drawing the veins on the petals of the orchid flowers. It was interesting to study the flower and see how the lines are mostly straight, long lines from the start to the end of the petal, and then at the end there are a few extended short lines that branch out on an angle. This project had a tight deadline of being finished in 1 month, and at the time I was working full-time in a hybrid role and had to commute to the office some days. Part of the way I got this finished in time was working on the train on the way to work. I specifically started getting the train instead of driving, so I had that little bit of extra time to create mood boards on my phone. I did this using the Canva app. I also chose the Canva app to make my mood boards because I could easily switch from my phone while I was out to my laptop once I got home. The mood boards themselves had a set date to be sent by, and being able to work on this on the go was helpful in getting them sent on time. For the blue poison dart frog, this was a fun one to draw. I don't think I had seen this type of frog before this, and I loved all its little spots. I found several images that had a similar pose to what I was going for, and I would look back at these whilst drawing. In the frog mood board, I actually provided a few options of the type of frog that could be drawn. When I researched frogs that live in the jungle, some of the options I looked at were the eastern dwarf tree frog, a red-eyed tree frog, and a poison dart frog. We settled on a blue poison dart frog. The ink drawing examples were great to explore the amount of detail the client was after by showing some images that were less extravagant than others. Once feedback was received from the mood boards, I had a clearer understanding of what the client preferred and liked, and could confidently start the draft work knowing what to draw. And last was the Monstera. I ended up drawing 2 types of Monstera with 1 leaf asset each. For both of them, I luckily had some at home as my indoor plants to reference. The other Monstera I drew is called a Monstera Deliciosa, which is a much bigger plant compared to the Swiss cheese type. It is also a classic Monstera with more variety and regularly seen as a household plant compared to the other types of Monstera, and so it was very recognisable. Socha Atelier is a bespoke slow fashion brand focusing on luxury loungewear that caters to post-surgery customers. Their recovery range is designed to accommodate medical devices, bags and supplies. They are crafted to restore both style and comfort during the challenging journey of surgery and recovery. Not only do they cater to a customer base that is looking for more range, but they are also entirely made in Australia. The fabric printing is done locally, and each garment is made to order and hand sewn by a local seamstress. I love the idea of contributing to an Australian small business that also has a commitment to ethical craftsmanship and sustainability, which I think is very important in the fashion world. Once assets are complete, I took photos of them and sent them to the client for approval. Luckily, they all came back all good, so the next steps was scanning and editing them before creating the repeat pattern. When editing, I removed the paper background from the scan and adjusted the blacks and whites in the asset to appear more like the original artwork. I unfortunately didn't record the whole pattern making process, as I had gotten sick at the time and forgot, and was under a tight deadline. But you can see some of the cleanup process here once the pattern was made. Here I'm adjusting the size of some of the assets based off feedback I had received from the first pattern. I've built my repeat pattern in Adobe Illustrator with the individual assets brought together and placed in an appealing way. Part of the brief was for the pattern to be full and busy with not much negative space. To achieve this with limited assets, I found ways to reuse an asset in different ways. For example, I have two frogs, but one is flipped and smaller compared to the other. Another part of the brief was to provide a pattern with a white background and then one with a black background. To make the black pattern look right, I edited this in Photoshop, where I could adjust the levels of the overall assets to suit the dark background. Once the pattern is complete, my part of the project is done and the design gets printed onto fabric and the loungewear is made. I loved the results, so I decided to get my own set of PJs and record a little unboxing. The loungewear is packaged in some branded tissue paper with a thank you card that has special notes on the product. I got the classic set in black, which has shorts and a short-sleeved buttoned-up shirt. They also have a lawn set, which would be suitable for the colder months. The fabric is 100% organic luxe satin cotton, which is lightweight and breathable. It's great for comfort and wearing day to night. I've opened up the shirt so you can see the extra details for a recovery fit set. The shirt has a hidden inner pocket which you can discreetly fit medical devices and equipment. For me, it's a fun extra pocket for my phone or snacks. I love pockets, so opted in for this when picking my purchase. Next, I wanted to capture the close-up details of the print. It is very exciting to see the final results of something I had been working on for months. The print came out beautifully, and the pattern is almost like a Where's Wally where you search through it to find all the different animals and plants. I've got some of the original artworks out and placed them next to their matching asset in the textile design. In the toucan print, you can see that all the fine feather details have still come through in the final print. The leopard spots printed great with a nice contrast from the spots to the animal to the black background. The leopard was a standout asset with the most variety on leaves and plants coming out behind it. Here you can see how the orchid asset was pulled apart and repurposed in the design to look different in different parts of the pattern. Here are some close-up details of the fabric. I loved seeing how crisp and clear my detailed drawings came out in a fabric version. And of course, I had to try the set on for myself. I love that I can now say I have my own set of pajamas to wear around the house that have my art on them. I'm in the studio here next to one of the Monsteras actually referenced in the drawings. I got this set in a size medium as I like my pyjamas to be extra loose for comfort. I generally size up for PJs, and I think I would have also enjoyed a size large. Overall, I loved how they turned out, and this was one of my favourite collaborations from my work in 2024. I've included details in the description of the website so you can go get some loungewear pieces for yourself. Or they even have gift cards which make a perfect present. Once the marketing for the range had started, I got to work on some extra little projects using my graphic design skills to make some digital gift cards and website assets for the gift card product images. This was a fun brief where I got to work with some of the branding colours and fonts, and also create a black and white version of the gift cards to match the different colour options for the loungewear sets. We've come to the end of this recording, going through my process of creating the textile design for this jungle themed range. I only showed small parts of the drawing process here, and will be creating videos going over the drawing process for each asset in future videos.